Hello, adventurers. My name's Tyler.
And I'm Richard.
On today's episode, we're talking about house rules. Welcome to True Strike.
Howdy, folks, and welcome back to the show.
Doctor House. MD.
You're about to do some questionable medical practice in the name of saving lives.
I do what I must.
If you've got to use the potion, you've got to use the potion, even if it's behind the back of the family members of the patient that's there, and goes against the whole medical board.
Yep.
Welcome to True Strike. No, we're talking house rules and or homebrew. Is it the same thing? House brews? House brews? We're going to go with house brew. I like house brew.
Home rules. Yeah. Anything that gets the point across to your players.
When I pitched this to you, I said homebrew, and you completely got the wrong idea.
Yep.
Because homebrew has a connotation to it. Of being like homebrew monsters and
magical items, things like that, classes, subclasses,
classes, stuff like that.
The witch class we reviewed recently, which if you haven't watched that episode yet, it's a great review. Yeah, great class created by Worlds Beyond Number. Good episode. Go check it out. That is homebrew.
Yeah, that's
very
homebrew.
High quality homebrew, but homebrew.
Yeah, and then what we're actually talking about here isn't homebrew, so to speak, not in that sense of the word. This is, like I said, more commonly called house rules. So this is rules that you use in your game, most likely D&D, but a lot of these can be applied to a bunch of different games, honestly. But TTRPG
we're just most familiar with D&D, so
we're
everything
with D&D, so we're taking it into the context of Dungeons and Dragons. For this episode. So these are rules that are not necessarily in the DMG or the player's handbook. Some of them are, but this is a slight variation on them. We use quite a few of our own, actually, in our home games. One of the very first things that Tyler did when he invited everybody over to start our first campaign was point everybody to the wall at the paper of house rules.
Yeah, welcome over. Please read this. If you have any issues with it, please let me know before we begin. There are at this point, and what's funny is I'll probably remember them as we go because they're so ingrained in us at this point.
Yeah.
I need to update this because there are at least a couple more things we do at this point, especially with the new edition of Dungeons & Dragons, how things have, right off the top, the very first one on here that was the most important to me and the reason we went down this path again with potions can be taken as a bonus action. That is a thing now.
Yeah.
And it wasn't then.
Yeah.
But just to clarify to people, hey, that's how we run things. Boom, it's right in paper.
Yeah.
And, we'll get to the rest of ours in a minute and stuff. But yeah, there's an example.
Yeah. So there's some of these, like I said, are ones that I've heard about other people using, read about on the internet from other people that we've talked to. Some of them are things that we actively use in the game here. So that's what we wanted to talk about because I also wanted to see about his input on some of these because I know there's some of these on this list that you don't use that you probably haven't heard of that may or may not be as popular.
Perfect.
And there's one of them on here that I think is really, really cool that you may not like. Trying to get you to weasel it in the game.
So you want me to do it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So yeah, the first one actually I had on my list is potions. So drinking potions. So it is bonus action now and everything like that. But the specific rule that I'm talking about is full not rolling uses of a potion.
Right. And that is one we do. That is our second point here.
Yeah.
If a potion's taken out of combat or as an action,
full action,
you get the full healing from it.
Yeah, you're not
no dice rolling. Yeah. You just get it. Did you, in your research, did you find that other people also do this, or is this okay?
Yeah. So this one is actually one of the more popular house rules out there.
I totally agree with it.
Exactly as written in here before the update. So bonus actions, and then if you did a full action, it was a full without rolling. And now people still are using the full no roll. Yeah. If you're using it as an action, people are still using that portion.
And we will too.
Rule. So yeah, so it is very popular.
It just makes sense to me in the sense of if you're in combat, you can use your bonus action. You still got your sword up in one hand. You pop out the cork and you're just trying to get down as much as you can. Maybe some drops miss, whatever. So you get that roll. But if you're taking your full focus and it is just on staying alive, and you just down the potion, you should just get all the full points from it, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
It's always had a really fun visual in my head for this one too, because like I have the whole visual of like, two people like sword fighting, and then like the one guy is all like hold, and then he whips out a potion and then just pops it, and then it's just like chugging it while holding the sword up.
Yeah.
And then the other guy's just politely waiting, like, yeah, as soon as you're finished with that, we can get back to it. Then he, finishes it off, throws a bottle across the room, clangs against the wall, and they go back into the fight.
I don't know if that's something we've ever spoken about, but when I picture like a round of combat, everything's like, oh, it's a 6-second turn. Do you picture most of that 6 seconds happening at the same time? Because I do.
Yeah.
So in that instance, did the one guy technically choose to like initiate the potion swig first, and then the other guy waited and then
he waited, yeah.
But in my vision of that, he pops it up, goes to drink it, starts drinking, and the guy is charging in at the same moment. Just mechanically, it's after, but in a round sense, it's all 6 seconds.
Yeah. No, mine is a more polite interaction.
It's just
where it's like, oh, are you pulling out a potion? Yeah. Oh, no, take your time. Hold on. I'll wait.
Yeah.
Go ahead and finish that up.
I could beat you no matter how many potions you drink.
Go ahead and finish that up, and we'll continue after.
Right.
Yeah, I see it as a more polite interaction.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's one. The next one that I have on here, so most of these are actually in, I've kind of ordered them in popularity that I saw as I was like doing research, and some of the ones that we use are a little bit higher toward the top.
Okay.
The next one here is dice rolls outside of the tray don't count.
Yeah, and I don't think that's one
which is not on this list.
It was not set in stone. But
sometime during one of our games,
yes,
I remember it happened. A die didn't hit the tray; it rolled out, and somebody said, "Doesn't count. It wasn't in the tray."
Well, I think I remember this moment too, and I believe I said this is the moment we establish
whether or not
this counts.
This counts.
Yes, because are we are we like, because that's a bad roll.
Yeah,
and you know what? I would say. I re-rolled it. It was out of the tray. But if we're establishing out of the tray counts, you're sticking with this roll. And I think that, like, set in stone, must go in the tray.
From here on out, it's always been, if it's not in the tray, then it doesn't count. Correct. Unless, with the exception of, there isn't a tray.
Yeah.
And we're doing, like, a roll, like, on the table or something like that. There's no tray.
Very purposefully. It's
very purposeful roll. Yeah. But if there is a tray and you are shooting for it.
Yep.
And you miss it completely, or you bounce out, which happens on a weekly basis with our coworker.
Yeah, our associate from work uses the silicone,
the rubber
dice,
bouncy dice,
and they just
they're other roll they're like launching across the table into somebody's drink.
And he's like, I don't know why this keeps happening.
I don't understand why these bounce so much.
Like, what are you doing?
They're made out of super balls.
It's the tray's fault.
They're made out of super bouncy balls.
The walls aren't high enough.
So yeah, this is interesting because when I was looking up this, there is actually a whole like group of people there's another subsect which is off the table doesn't count. Out of the box counts. So if you roll it out, but as long as it stays on the table, doesn't count. And then there are a bunch of people that were like, too. Doesn't matter where it lands in the house. Whatever phases up
cast.
when it is found is what counts. So if you have to pick up the couch and you see that one when you pick up that couch, it's a one.
And here's the thing, and this is why it's important to set your house rules the moment people walk in and like sit down at your table, because there's merits to all of those.
Yes, there is merit.
And hey, if I go to someone else's place and they say, "Yup, it leaves the table," it's still fair game.
You gotta find it.
Yeah, that's fine.
So that one's a fun one. The next one here is hit dice. So this one was actually brought up pretty recently at our game because this is one that you've done for a while.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where it traditionally D&D at your, let's say you spend all of your hit dice. Well, at long rest you're going to get back half your level rounded down, in hit dice expended back. So for level 10 you're only going to get 5 back if you went all the way down to 0. And then if you spend none that day, well, you get another 5 at your next long rest. And then you'll be back up to your max. I don't like that. You're just adding more things to the game. And I've never had players that have ever been like, oh, I only get half back, right? No one knows about that rule.
Yeah, it is not common.
So I just need to get them all back. Whatever.
Well, I think it's because I don't know. It feels like it makes more common sense that you get them all back. So that's what people just assume.
Sure.
Right. And it's interesting that, and I think the reason why it hasn't come up too much in our games is because, like, if I go back to our previous campaigns, we didn't short rest that much.
Very seldomly.
Like, very seldomly did we short rest. And when we did short rest, very seldomly did we use more than like one hit die per person. And I think that's because in previous games we have had, I guess, more healer-centric characters around. So spells were used more and items were used more.
I mean, we always have
heal up.
clerics.
That's what I'm saying. So we were always kind of topping off in other ways.
Yeah.
So hit dice just weren't like a focus thing.
Even now, you've got, between your character Lux,
Yeah.
your witch, and then our resident cleric, there's still plenty of healing.
There's still plenty of
And I
healing,
think-
but in our defense, we are neither me nor the cleric are focusing on being the healing/support class. We're both doing offensive as well.
And devil's advocate to that, though. We've been playing this campaign for year and a half, and it's just now come up about the hit die thing.
Yeah, exactly. It's
Because-
just now come up because things are getting harder.
Yeah, for sure. But like even then, you're a lot of times you get that one big combat for the day, and then everyone's like, "Whew,
boy.
guess we'll long rest." And all right, okay. So it's interesting because things are getting harder. So you're getting hurt more. So you need to get that health back, but you're strong enough that you can keep going for more than a fight or two.
I know what it is. And I just remembered exactly what it is. And we've talked about this before.
Oh,
And that is Curse of Strahd. This is a side tangent here. Is absolutely terrifying
at night.
as far as timetables are considered.
That's fair enough.
And
Why?
that's
Because you have 100 different things happening at once.
Because we've never been so like, I have never felt like I'm working in my cubicle waiting for my boss Strahd to walk by and ask me about the reports that I'm working on.
That were due yesterday.
Yeah. Or just walking by and dropping another stack of papers in my inbox and then seeing the empty outbox. I've never felt that as much as I feel it from Strahd right now. In any other game that we've played, and any other big bads or any other worlds that we've been in, we've never been so like underneath the watchful eye of Strahd as we are now. And that's why it's becoming a problem now, because we can't just long rest. That's a luxury.
Yeah.
Right now, short rest is the only option, because long rest means people die. Sometimes those people are you.
So it is funny though, right? Because there's obviously things moving. This is behind the DM screen. There's things moving in the background. Of course, this is the living, breathing like world. This campaign is just constantly moving. You guys have felt the effects of this.
Yeah.
Felt the effects of your decisions while positively doing some things, other things negatively happen. And if you had done those things instead, well, guess what? The things you didn't do this way fall. Dominoes are falling everywhere.
Yeah.
You can only keep up so many. There is like timetable happening right now.
Yeah.
I, in my mind, have an idea of how many days are left before this campaign comes to an end, which means you guys only have so many long rests left.
Yeah.
And I have that number in my head, and it's an actual set thing to me.
And that's why,
and you don't know it.
And that's why the hit point or hit dice are so important for us to be able to sink as many as we want.
Yeah. Imagine if we only get half of it back now.
Because if we only get half of them back, it's going to hurt us a lot more.
Maybe I should only do that,
No.
I'm not going to change it halfway through.
Speaking of behind the DM screen, that brings us to our next homebrew, which is the rolling of death saving throws.
Oh, this is one we do. Yep.
Behind the DM screen. And this is not one that we did from the beginning, but we
adopted fairly quickly.
We adopted very quickly because we heard about it, and we came to the game one night and we're all like, hey, let's talk about this as a group.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think of this? And we kind of pitched it to you and like what you thought of it. And you were all like, we'll start right now.
Sure.
Let's go.
I will pile on the stress to you.
Yeah.
No problem. And we felt the
welcome
effects
that
of it.
stress.
We felt the effects of it very quickly.
Oh my God. Yes.
And I can remember right back to the Z team combat with the horses and everything else. And then you've got the one player who's downed, and it's like, all right, it's fine.
It was
right?
stressful.
They're probably okay. We probably have a couple rounds to get healing to them, don't we?
And spoiler alert, we didn't.
They were done.
Yeah.
They were dead. So
yeah,
a natural one and another fail immediately after will do that to you.
Yeah, no, but
like, we made it here in 3 turns. But they were gone in 2.
They were gone in 2. Yeah, which didn't work out for us in that. In the long run, it worked out, but that was a really cool thing. And that was like one of those moments that really reinforced the decision to start doing that house rule as a great decision, because it completely changed like the way we acted. And
when someone went unconscious.
When somebody went unconscious, and it gives you a little bit more stress, but stress in a good way.
Yeah.
Because you're actually playing the game and thinking like a person instead of numbers on a sheet.
Right.
Right. So,
oh, they just succeeded on their last save, so they're good this round.
Yeah, they're good. I can go over and do this instead of like, oh my god, one of my party members is unconscious on the ground and bleeding out.
They could die next round
unless I stabilize them. Yeah, so that is I think this is probably one of my favorite house rules that we use, and that I saw on the list in general. I'm
glad to see other people are doing it too, because it's one that you actually got me a die for it. That is just like a death saving throw die too, and I use that whenever people go down, and it definitely adds like weight to my side too. And it's this thing where I'm always like, I don't want someone's character to die because I rolled poorly, and so every time I roll the die, I'm like, oh god, please don't be a 1. Please.
I just see conversely, I as a player don't have to worry about being the one that killed my horrible
it's just me.
rolls. Yeah, I just blame you now. Yeah. It's fine. I get to blame you twice.
That's the
because you started
part.
the combat and then you killed me with the roll.
yeah, fair enough.
Yeah,
that's why I like the die you got me though. It's not even numbers. So if it's like a 2 or a 4, I don't know. It's just a skull.
Just a skull. This next one is one that I thought was really fun that we don't have in our current game, and that is a nat 20 on initiative. So this one is, I found a couple people use this one, and it's if you roll a nat 20 on your initiative, you get to choose your spot. So you get to choose then the number that you actually roll for initiative. You want to keep it the nat 20 and then add your initiative bonus on it, and that's your thing. Or do you go with something like, say, a 10 because you want to go after the barbarian or after the wizard?
Sure. That's it. I get why people are doing it, because if you roll a 20 and it's that special moment and you're like, all right, cool. With my initiative bonus, I have a 22.
Yeah.
And then your rogue rolls like a 17 and they get a 25 and they go before you, even though they rolled worse, air quotes. And it just doesn't feel as good. I get why people do this. I would be down to try this.
Yeah.
I know that's what you want me to say.
You seem skeptical.
No. It's
is it skeptical because
it's one I hadn't heard.
Is it? No, you seem apprehensive, and I'm trying to get to the root of your apprehension. Is it because of that? Like you don't want somebody to be able to say, "Okay, I want to go very first in this combat."
It gets interesting
even above the big bads.
So that's where it gets interesting when I look at it on the DM side. Because if I roll natural 20, I'm not choosing where they go. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's just going to be so. Even at that, I'm already like, all right, I already have to adjust it. Because I'm going to say if the players roll a crit, if they get a natural 20, a critical success on initiative, they can choose where in line they want to go. And at that point, I would go through, tell everyone where they are, and I would ask that player, all right, this is the order. Where would you like to go?
Yeah.
Before, after this party member, etc. But as the GM, if I roll natural 20, it's just 20 plus initiative. That's the change to it I would make out the jump.
Sure.
And if you had a couple people, get it at the same time, congratulations. They could argue about who goes where.
Unless do you feel this is kind of broken in a way that we're not seeing? That's what I'm asking you.
I don't think so at all.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, it's all going to come down to luck. The only thing where it does take away potentially some agency from the rogue. The rogue built their kit to go first.
Yeah.
And if you were just luckier, you got the natural 20, and now you choose to go before the rogue. I can fit that into story. You just happen to jump into action faster. You saw the pieces, of the puzzle coming into place quicker than they did.
Yeah.
In this instance, they're still more likely to go first. That's what a crit is, though. It's that 5% chance that something's going to work out in your favor.
And I'm actually trying to think of the last time that somebody rolled a crit on an initiative roll in one of our games.
It's super seldom.
And I cannot think.
It was a couple of games ago. I think it was Hootzifer.
Really? Yeah. I'm trying to think of when it happens, and I can't remember. I know I haven't rolled a crit for initiative.
Well, he has a negative, too.
In a very long
So he got a crit,
time.
and I think he ended up with like an 18.
With an 18.
So,
but yeah, no, I thought this one was kind of fun. I had never heard of it until I started looking around these things. And when I saw it, I was pleasantly surprised because a lot of them were ones that I had heard of before. So there was not a lot of new stuff in here. And this was one of them that was very, very new to me. And I was all like, oh, that's fun.
I think, in fact, I want to bring one up that we don't have listed on here, I don't believe.
Oh, shoot.
And that is one that Brendan Lee Mulligan does. And that's that a natural 20 is not, while not always being a guaranteed you get what you want, is a guaranteed success in one way or another. It's same as a natural 1 is a guaranteed failure in one way or another.
So you mean like a limited success, right?
So it's one of those things where like, well, a 20 on the die outside of combat does not guarantee that you're gonna be able to jump through this window and land without taking the damage. Blah 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 blah. That's a acrobatic skill check. Skill checks don't get a critical. No, it's dumb. You get a natural 20 jumping out the window. You're catching the branch on the tree on that way down, and you're gonna land really safely.
Easy ways to embellish upon a story, to make a success happen with a critical roll.
Now, the only thing I know a lot of people will bring up, like, oh, well, if you're trying to convince the king to give you his castle on a natural 20, he's not going to give you the castle. Correct.
Well, yeah, obviously,
but this is why it's all in good faith. Is at a natural 20, he's gonna laugh it off, and maybe you've gained some like favor with him, and he's you're charming, it's funny.
Success is measured on levels.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Where 19, even at that point, you're like, he is over you. This was an incredibly high check. You weren't able to get it, and one of the things Brennan has brought up is then don't have your players roll.
Yes,
if
he
it
said
is
that,
not,
I've heard him say that before. If
it's not possible to succeed, do not roll. If it's not possible to fail, because a 1 plus your bonus, like if it's not possible to fail, don't roll. That's what the 1 and 20 are for.
Yeah.
And while that's not on our list, I believe it should be.
Yeah.
That would be one I would add.
That's a fun one.
Yep.
The next thing I have on here is really simple, and this is one that I've seen all over the place, and it's one that literally everybody does. This is kind of the unwritten house rule, and that's reskinning.
Yeah, that's another one we could totally throw on ours if we listed it.
And that is, to be more specific, you don't know what reskinning is. That is just changing the skin of something, so changing the optics of a thing to fit a narrative that like fits a character choice or an environment that you're in. A really easy thing to do with that would be like something that came up recently for us, a fire-based character not wanting to be fire-based, wanting to be ice-based. Right, so all you're doing is taking the incidences of like, making a ball of fire and it's a ball of ice, or, that kind of thing, where you're not changing what the actual damage does and what the things do. You're not changing the way the spells act. You're changing the way that they physically look and
changing the damage type and the color.
Yeah.
Now, even that one though, I know some people are going to have more of an issue with, because they're going to be like, well, fire is the most resisted damage type in the game. Yes. So when you switch it to something else, it's statistically more likely to do full damage or something. I don't care.
Yeah.
Like, whatever. If I had a player that's coming in and they're specifically trying to go against, like, oh, we're going to be in Barovia, I want all of my spells to be radiant damage. Yeah, we might have a conversation there.
That's what I'm saying. It's you can easily have a conversation to where you mitigate that and fix that to where it's not going to completely break your game.
Yep.
Because there's a difference between reskinning and trying to meta game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even better for me example would be something like they want to use the statistics of like a Warhammer, but they want it to be a saxophone that they beat people with.
Yes.
And I'm like, okay, yeah, that's totally fine.
Yeah.
You got your war sax and you're gonna bludgeon people while playing your inspirational songs.
Yeah. And people take this like even further than this too, with reskinning like species. Like totally take like a species that exists and like make up something new that uses the skin of an existing species and the stats of the existing species.
I want to be a dog person. Yeah, take the tabaxi.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you're a dog person.
Tabaxi, and you have the same stuff, relatively easy.
Yep.
And you just kind of run it over. So
floppy ears, long tongue.
Reskinning is like I said, kind of the unwritten rule that a lot of people use. It's just something that's fairly common. A lot of people don't think about. Technically a house ruling.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Yeah. This next one actually kind of goes back to the death saving throws. I should have moved this one on the list in here, which is making players roll behind the screens for secret checks in general. Which this is something that we've never done, but I think is going to be coming.
Yes. Where? Oh, what was it in?
So it was in.
It was in one of the episodes of World's Beyond Number.
Yeah.
Yes, that's
because I remember
was.
it. You were ahead of me on
Brennan,
an episode.
he's so inspirational.
And you came in and you were all like, "Brandon just did something amazing. I'm going to do it.
I'm taking it.
I'm taking
now.
this. I'm using this." And actually, that statement is what gave me the inspiration for this episode.
The whole thing.
This whole episode was because you had another house rule that Brennan's using that was really fun, that we're going to adapt into our games. And I was like, oh, I want to talk about house rules, and I want to look at more house rules.
It's just so simple. Like, why couldn't I have thought about this myself sooner?
Yeah,
but it's just having the player roll the die over the screen so that they cannot see the result, but you can. And that is so simple, but it's amazing.
Oh, it's amazing.
You're doing a medicine check to save someone's life. You're doing like CPR or something, and you're not a skilled doctor. Well, roll on my side of the screen and I'll narrate what happens. And the amount of like tension you're going to get from your players on their side of the table, on the screen for like the next 30 seconds while you describe their players like just doing their best to keep up the compressions, and you see like the life fade from this person's eyes, and then after a few seconds they come up and they're, oh my goodness, like, you got a 19. Like, I hate you.
All the tension, and that's one example, and the other example would be like trying to lie to somebody, right?
Yeah.
Or like trying to gauge somebody's reaction to something, and that it's not even something that has to be given away in the next 30 seconds.
Right.
Like,
oh, for sure.
That is something
you may never actually like.
Yeah, because
really
I was
know.
like, oh, I'm trying to like, tell somebody something, and I want to see how they're going to react.
Yep.
And then I give you a roll behind the screen, and then you describe something that happens, and you could be very vague about how they react to this.
Yeah.
And now I'm left to wonder, did it work? I don't know.
Right.
And that's going to drive me crazy every time I'm around this person now, because I don't know if it worked. I don't know if they're, convinced or whatever it may be. Mm-hmm. It's just such a simple thing.
It's so simple.
That can change the way that you would even advance in the narrative in the story.
It's just, it's funny that you were like, oh, it's like the death saving throw. It's just like the death saving throw.
Yeah.
Because yet again, you're taking knowledge away from the player that will impact their decision making for the foreseeable future.
Yeah.
And just like not knowing whether your ally is close to death, you do not know if this person you try to convince of a lie believes you, and you do not.
That one right there alone is like wild to me.
Right.
The implications of that. Because like I can totally see you using that against us, to like talking to somebody in town, or like trying to do something, or like I'm talking to a guard and we're like, they come up and they ask us questions, and then they're like, okay, and they walk away from us.
Right.
And then I'm like, oh God.
Yeah.
Like, do we need to leave like right now? Are they going to get backup? Is he going to get lunch?
You notice he's talking to another guard and they're both looking at you.
Yeah, and now I'm looking at them. And they're looking at me, and I'm looking at them. And they're over there like, why are they looking at us?
He's like, oh, don't worry.
I asked for their papers and they checked out.
Don't worry, they're good.
They're good. Are they good? Because that guy is really freaking out over there.
He's really sweaty.
Why is he waving at us so awkwardly? Yeah, it's just like, it's so easy to get into the minds of your players. And I know how susceptible I am to this stuff. It's so easy for you to just weasel in there and make me do things because I'm freaking out, man.
Yeah. And I'm all about D&D's or tabletop in general's like video game logic in some things. But every once in a while you take part of that out and it's just like, oh, wait a minute. I don't instantly know if I probably succeeded at this because I got a 19 on the die.
Yeah. There's something about that instant gratification that does change the way that you play 100%. The game.
Yep.
Like it really does change the way that you play the game. So this one is cool, and I can't wait to see it implemented.
Yeah.
It's going to be fun.
It's coming. Thanks, Brandon.
The next thing I have on here is interesting because it's a mechanic that we've seen in other games we've played recently, which is party inspiration. And so that is the idea that instead of doling out inspiration to individual people, you handle it Baldur's Gate 3 style.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Whereas in the DM gives the party inspiration.
Here's a token.
Pool.
Yeah.
And then the party can pull from that pool. So most recently, we've seen it in Dreams and Machines. Very similar mechanic. Yep. Also Dune, very similar mechanics. Mm-hmm. You can have basically kind of like a group pool that anybody can pull from. And it's interesting because all the people, like all the systems that actually use this rule and people that, house rule it into their D&D games, it's just straight up a party pool that anybody can pull from without asking for permission.
Yep, that's the main thing. You don't have to ask. You can.
Which you can. And when we played like Dreams, everybody was very polite with their rulings. They were all like, okay, yeah, can we do this?
Do you mind if I use all of these?
I use this for this? Because this is very important to the party. And everybody's like, oh yeah, go for it. I think once in Dune, it was done straight up without even asking. Totes. It was all like, I'm doing this and taking it.
And that was, I don't know if that's the players or the world that, Dune is versus Dreams and Machines, because there's definitely like a difference there too.
Yeah.
But we definitely had players in Dune, whether role playing or not, just in it for themselves.
That's what I think. So I think it's the difference in the game, because I think in Dreams and Machines, it was more like everybody was more community based. So they were more friendly with each other.
It felt like in Dreams, we knew that our chance of survival was better together.
Yes.
In Dune, it was like, well, if I make it out alive.
Yeah. And Dune, it's more of like sure, I'm with people right now. However, I'm still number one.
Totally. We had one player.
I still have things that I need to get done.
In the last few minutes, was ready to leave everyone else for dead.
Yeah.
And said even after the game, he's like, oh, why did you do this instead of this? And like, oh, I was about to leave.
Yeah.
But why do I don't know these people. Like what? You're like, why would I have stayed?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, well, it's hard to argue with you when you're right.
It's interesting.
Kind of a jerk move, but
Yeah. And like I said, this is something that we've encountered in the last couple of games that we've played, and I never really thought about applying it into Dungeons and Dragons. And I did find a couple of different ways people use this. Sometimes people use that as a full-on replacement for inspiration. Mm-hmm. And then there were some people that say, oh yeah, I totally do this in addition to actual inspiration.
Oh, interesting.
So they still dole out individual inspirations, but then very sparingly will give out into the party pool. But the party pool is very dependent on the size of the actual adventuring party.
Yeah.
So if it's a large party, the pool is obviously bigger than if you're running with 3 people. They might only have like 1 inspiration in their pool, maybe 2 at max kind of a situation. But they still do individual inspirations. And then some people even take it further to really hammer down what the party pool inspiration can be used for. So a lot of times those can only be used for like specific types of checks instead of just like any rolls. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So it just depends on what people are doing with it. There's a lot of variations on it.
Everyone has their own.
Everybody has their own kind of a way to look at it. But I thought that one was kind of neat and could be interesting to use.
I mean, it's funny how the inspiration, heroic inspiration, etc. like works at this point. How everyone seems to treat it differently. It's always differently in the book. The way we handle it now is, or at least currently, is that if someone already has it and they're granted another, what's what I'm looking for? I give you inspiration again, and you already have it. I'd like, okay, well, who do you want to give it to?
Yeah.
And then that, you give it to someone else. You can only have one charge of it at a time. And then you've got some people that do the whole cardspiration, where, anytime they're granted inspiration or at the beginning of the game, sometimes they just draw a top card from the deck and that they don't look at it. And then whenever they want to use that number, they add it to the roll. They flip it over. And if it's an ace or something like that, it's a crit. But if you, roll, it's a 2, well, it's a 2 plus whatever you had. And some people really love that.
That sounds fun.
And, it's just definitely neat.
Different.
That's one of the ones too, where we haven't played it. Was it Weird West or there's like Western TTRPG or even like a Western Cthulhu. I would absolutely, if I was running some sort of Western game where I could throw poker in there somewhere or something, I would absolutely have this in there where at the beginning of every game, it starts off, you're narrating the events, doing the recap, and you just deal out a single card to each of your players, and that's their card inspiration for the game.
That's fun.
Yeah.
I like it.
Ooh.
This one is a big one.
This one, I want to hear what you got on this.
So this one is big, and I wrote, it's just 2 words because it's a lot to discuss in this one, because this one is the source of a lot of contention online. people get heated when they talk about this one, and that is spell components.
Mm-hmm.
Whether or not you use them or not, or if you use them at all, if you use them sparingly, how do you operate spell components? And this, I think, is big for everybody. I think there's a lot of different tables and a lot of different tables that handle things differently. When I started reading about this, there is a whole subsect of the internet, obviously, that is very adamant that if you are not using spell components down to the tea leaf, you are doing it wrong and ruining Dungeons and Dragons. That you have to hold your spellcasters accountable for every single component that they need. Every cricket that they need to carry around in a little cage. Every diamond, every little gem worth 3 gold piece, every piece of incense, every parchment, every single piece of spell component.
You need that bat guano.
Yes, you have to have pouches of this stuff, and their characters need to spend at least an hour in every town tracking down components before they go back out and fight again.
Your spellcasters shall never know wealth.
And then there's a bunch of people that say they exist. Spell components are definitely on that sheet. It is assumed that you have that in your pouch. Use it.
Yeah. You have a focus? Great. That's where your magic comes from.
Yeah. So yeah, this one's very divided as far as like the internet's considered. We have never put that much stock into spell components.
The most I have ever required, asterisk on required, because we even had a one player, Kelly, who mentioned, who's going to try out Wizard. And I told him when he was setting up his character, I was like, hey, great. If you want to use a focus, that's fine. If you want to lean into the whole spell components, even better. Because I personally love the thematics of you pull out some bat guano, you mix it with some sulfur, you rub it in your hands, and you flick your fingers forward.
Oh,
and
I
an
love
orange beam
that.
comes out, and an explosion, and a fireball. Like, I love that stuff. I don't require it by any means. The only thing I do require is that if a spell has a monetary cost, like a diamond worth 100 gold or 1,000, whatever, that.
Yeah.
If you were going to cast Hero's Feast, guess what? You need your crown, your ruby jeweled whatever crown, and you gotta have that, for these super high level spells or anything that requires the, monetary supplement, whatever. Your focus is not going to replace that.
Yeah.
But that's it.
Yeah.
If you want to just and I make the spell happen, good for you.
Well, I think there's a pretty clear delineation there as far as I want to say power levels, where you're looking at okay, well, I'm not going to split hairs over the spell components for casting Alarm on your campsite for the evening. However, if you're doing something like Revivify,
yeah,
right,
or
you're doing something like Hero's Feast, it's a little bit different of a scenario because that's big magic.
Yeah,
right. Those are big spells, require big components.
Big deal. Big spells.
Bigger deals. At the very least, like you say, maybe not actually having the physical thing, but having the monetary value to be able to obtain said thing. We're not going to split hairs over spending 3 sessions for you trying to track down a thing to be able to do it. If you don't want that to happen thematically, then that's a different story.
Yeah.
Like if you're really trying to keep your players from casting Revivify for some specific reason, maybe it is a bit of a chase to try and find that component that you need, that they maybe have the money for it, but they got to find somebody that's dealing in it. And, if you're in the middle of the wilderness, how do you explain getting something like a giant diamond? You know what I mean? So there are ways to manage that sort of a thing. But that's, I think, where the big delineation for a lot of most people would come in, which is lower level stuff. Why split hairs over it unless you really want to be meta in the game? Which some people love that type of game.
That's to say, if we were setting up a campaign, this would be discussed at the beginning, session 0.
100%.
If we were doing a very Dark Knight, nitty gritty, down to earth story, and we wanted those hit dies to only regen half your level at long rest, and we wanted every single little thing to matter. 100%. I would love to do something where your spell components really are going to matter in this sort of thing. Yeah. We're also going to push exhaustion more often. And we're going to hit all these points.
Yeah.
I'm not just going to punish the wizard.
Yeah.
And I say punish. I'm not just going to be a stickler on the wizard
Well,
because they're not doing a
the thing,
shopping
is that,
session
yeah,
out of
when you have
I'm out of money because the DM didn't give me enough money in these last like scenarios and stuff because it didn't make sense for there to be a lot of money in these scenarios and stuff. But spell components cost a lot of money.
So, and I can't just forage for parchment.
I guess you're just doing
on
cantrips.
the side of the road. Yeah. And when you say punish the wizards, it kind of that's what a lot of people think when they think spell components. And when we start reading about it online, it's people saying, well, spell components we don't deal with because it feels like a punishment to anybody who's
Very
decided to play a caster. Because the barbarian doesn't have to worry about spell components. He just has to worry about getting mad.
Yeah.
Which is free.
So many times a day.
Yeah. Whereas the wizard has to track how many sticks of incense that he has if you're going to be a stickler about that sort of thing.
The ranger, what are we counting arrows?
Yeah.
Like let's break this down. If we're gonna be real stickler on one class, you're doing it all the classes.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if the wizard wants to focus on their spell components,
oh yeah,
be my guest.
Be my guest.
At that point, I will say when you go to town, hey, are you refreshing your spell components? You tell me yes. I'm like, all right, cool. It's this much gold or whatever, or I will.
It doesn't have to be super complicated.
Correct.
You can make it streamlined, and like you said, it's really fun to have that theming that goes along with it.
Yeah.
And I think one of my favorites is Caleb Widogast, describing his spell work.
I think most people only know of this kind of wizardry because of him, because he made such a show of that.
Made such a show of using materials and how he described on using them.
I really did like the take they did with the Dungeons & Dragons movie.
I knew you were about to bring this up
because
it was super fun.
It's super sick. And he does the spins it around and the spell components pop out. Oh, so cool.
If you haven't seen it, it's not really spoilery, but the wizard in there basically has like a little side pouch.
Yep.
It's not really a pouch, it's like a mechanical thing with like little pods in it.
Yeah.
And he can like spin it like a roulette wheel, grab out the components and spin it back around.
It's so
it's
cool.
Such a really cool way.
Yep.
And like visually amazing. It was like, how do I never think about this before?
Right.
Like it's like artificer wizard.
Yeah.
It's
really,
really,
that's
really
the
cool.
thing.
Yeah.
Oh, my father was an artificer and he helped me make this. Like, it's so cool.
But yeah, spell components, very divisive.
God, can you imagine the narrative like hook for that too? You get like partway through a campaign, you do like a big battle and your component pouch gets damaged.
Oh man.
And you have to, the only one guy that knows how to fix this is my father. And I haven't seen him since he went up to the mountains. Like, guess we're going to the mountains.
Guess we're going to the mountains
moving
now.
the story. I want to play this game. We were talking before we started recording today. We don't play enough D&D.
No, we don't play enough.
We play a lot more than some people.
Yeah.
But still not enough.
Still not enough.
What's next?
This next one.
I
hate.
I saw this one earlier.
I hate. But it's actually fairly common. So this one, I read about it in one list, and then I was like, "There's no way people actually use this." And I started to read about it and go down this rabbit hole. And a lot of people don't like ruling as it is for when people go unconscious, when people go down to 0 hit points.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people feel the need that going to 0 hit points and then being able to just like hit somebody with a healing word and bring them right back up with, like whatever those hit points are and back into battle is way too easy. And a lot of people feel this way. So there are tons of rules about how to handle this to make it harder for you to not, or to just get right back up.
Sure.
So the most popular here is that when you drop to 0 and you get healed that first time, you don't actually get back up.
Right.
It just brings you to a stable condition.
No longer rolling death throws.
So yeah, you're no longer rolling death saving throws. It just stabilizes you, and that is it. And so that's a very popular one. Mm-hmm. So that first heal that gets popped off on you, even if somebody heals you for 20, some of the paladin runs over and lays on hands for 20, it's just stabilizing. You go from 0 to stable.
Sure.
That is all, no matter how much healing comes your way. People then go even further on this one.
Why,
is that when you do get up, you have a level of exhaustion. Which sounds,
sure. With modern exhaustion rules, I could for sure see that.
Sure.
I could see that one absolutely. If you're taking 20 points of healing.
Nope, you're just
Sucks.
stabilized. That's it. Yeah. Now, people think that is even too nice. That's being too generous. So a lot of people have healing thresholds that they apply to it. So if I'm at 0, right, I'm not stable, you come over to heal me, but you only heal me for 8, It's not going to do it, buddy. So they have a threshold of 10. You have to beat that threshold of 10, period. And then I can come up with 1 life. So I'll come back with 1 hit point.
At least the 20 would have gotten you up.
So at least the 20 would have gotten me up, but it only gets you up with 1 hit point. And I've seen thresholds anywhere from 10 all the way up to like 15.
Sure.
So 15 was like the highest threshold that I saw that people actively use in games. And this is something that people are using, which shocks me.
I get it. It's the same people that were going to want to do the components thing, right? You want to add that like realism into your fantasy, forget the world tabletop game, I guess. And you want to increase the difficulty. And sometimes it's like, well, in D&D, if you've got 1 hit point, you full hit point, 1 hit point. Either way, as long as you're alive on your turn,
yeah,
you get your full act, full round, full turn, whatever. You're just as efficient or useful to your team with 1 or 80.
Or 80, yeah.
And it's not until you hit 0 that it's actually a problem. And if they can get you back up to 1, you're a full-fledged character again with access to all of your features. The level of exhaustion is interesting.
Yeah.
Because I could see that one actually like every time you go down, you do have this thing that's stacking. And even the threshold thing, like, oh, we got to get 10 before you go to 1. At that point, though, if anything past 10, I would maybe give to you. Oh, if you heal it for 20 and threshold was 10, I think you're going to get 10. So I see the merits of this for sure, especially if you have people where multiple people in the party have access to Healing Word, for example, and it's a bonus action. So one guy goes down, and then let's say you, Lux, and the cleric were both the two, in the party split, and it was the 2 of you. One of you goes down, and the cleric goes down, you Healing Word, cleric's back up. Right after your round, you go down. Cleric looks at you, Healing Word, you're back up. And you just do this,
keep
shuffle back and forth.
Yeah.
And it's one bad guy who's just going back and forth on who they're going to hit. And they're going to whack-a-mole. And you guys are going to outlast them because every time they get 1 swing, you go down, they turn to the other one, they're back up, they hit him, bonus action, other person's back up, they hit you.
You only got so many spell slots, though.
For sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's where it's going to limit. But that's where I can see people getting like, well, it doesn't make any sense. You're just, what's the point?
Yeah.
1 hit point, you're all the way like back up to normal. I could see some tweaks here and there if people are actually getting bothered by it. I don't care personally. It's never once have we played a game where I was like, if only they had just stayed dead.
Only just stayed dead.
I don't want you guys to lose.
Most DMs don't. That's the thing, right?
I am never going to come at this where like, I'm disappointed that you guys succeeded in a fight or a mission.
You survived that encounter.
Yeah, right. Now, doesn't mean I'm going to like hold back in situations, but
oh yeah, you got to make it tense, got to make it exciting.
Yeah. If you guys come out because you pulled some like chain healing thing and you managed to get some people back up to then finish off the job, good on you.
Yeah.
You did still have to manage spell slots.
Yes, you do have to still manage spell slots.
My favorite level 1 spell in the game is Healing Word. So this has been a thing.
It is funny that you bring up Healing Word and we're talking about it because while on this subject, I actually found that there are a lot of DMs that hate Healing Word and actually have their own house rules for Healing Word.
Are you browsing more house rules while we're talking about house rules?
No, this is something that I read when I was reading about this. Yeah, there's quite a few, like, because one of the things when you start to research this is you find like, oh yeah, people have these things and they have them written up that they give to their players before their game starts.
Good on them.
Some of them are insane because they are not house rules just like this.
It is a tome.
They are house rules that even go into specific spells and how they work and what spells are like even banned from the game. Like Silvery Barbs, for instance.
Every table is different.
Every table is different. Yeah.
Silvery Barbs is a contentious spell.
Yes.
Do I allow it? Yes. But the second one of my players cast it, guess what? The enemy spellcasters now all know Silvery Barbs.
Yeah.
That's just how it goes.
But I didn't realize how contentious Healing Word is. And it's a fairly contentious spell. Not amongst everybody, but there is a vocal minority that does not like Healing Word because it is so powerful for this specific thing, which is actually where a lot of this root from this unconscious condition stuff comes from, is because of Healing Word. because it is so easy to do. And it is so just like bonus action.
It's the best healing spell for sure.
You're going to have
so
a lot of
good.
spell slots for it. It's so good. So a lot of DMs, while they don't use this, will actually homebrew healing word to not be able to do specific things or not be able to use in this sort of an instance for bringing somebody back from unconscious.
Right.
So healing word is actually the reason for this house rule for a lot of DMs.
It's funny is I could even see someone, and I'm sure people have done it, house ruling the opposite action economy, where healing word is an action, but touch is, or cure wounds is a bonus action.
Yeah.
Because at least in that point, you have to be within, melee range.
Yeah, melee range.
And you're like, oh, as a bonus action, I touch, I give them some healing. And then, I get back to, I use my, actual action, do something else. And as my action, I'm going to hit the guy that's 30 feet away from me or whatever. I could see that for sure.
Yeah, I could 100% see that one.
But as is.
Yeah.
Healing word's just better.
As is, healing word is just better.
I'm not the guy that's going to tweak it.
So good.
I'm going to keep letting it happen. Because I want you guys to succeed. I want it to be fun. Doesn't mean fights aren't going to be hard.
No.
So, and bonus action economy does matter. Spell slots do matter.
Mm-hmm.
All comes up.
We got another weird one.
Yeah, do your weird one.
Short rests are only 5 minutes long.
Why though?
Max of 2 per day.
No.
Unless you expand upon it, which some people do, which is proficiency.
That's so many
per day.
Hold on.
Now, it's not proficiency for everybody. So it's not like, oh, you have a 3, I have a 3, you have a 3. We get 9 short rests, 9 5-minute short rests for the day.
But it's 2 per.
It's just the proficiency high of the entire group. So if your proficiency bonus is set at 3, then you get 3
6 of them.
Short rests.
It's 2 per.
No, that's what I'm telling you.
Sorry.
That's what I'm telling you.
2 per. I misread
people
it.
either do 2 per day
or proficiency
the proficiency bonus.
Okay.
So it's either just straight 2 per day or 3 times a day if your proficiency is 3. Right? And then they make them a 5-minute short rest.
Why are they 5 minutes though?
Because people don't like the idea that a short rest takes a longer amount of time because and I don't know if it stems from people not wanting to role play. Yes. They just want to get back into the action and they're like, I don't want to sit around for an hour
take any time
or
then?
whatever. I just want to get my hit dice, get them going, refresh my abilities, and get back to getting.
If there's no passage of time, there's no threat to a short rest.
Yeah.
Which that's why short resting is sometimes dangerous.
Yeah.
Like
because
you can't
you're
just short
still.
rest anywhere.
Yeah, you're standing still and stuff is still moving, stuff is still happening.
Right.
Time is still passing.
Time is passing. You're healing. You're actively healing in moments that you're using hit dies.
Yeah.
Your warlock is getting back spell slots.
Mm-hmm.
5 minutes?
Yeah, 5 minutes. Is that enough time to talk to your sugar daddy in the sky or the ground?
5 minutes don't make any sense to me. Well, clerics and warlocks, they're both just, they both got sugar daddies.
Yeah. But yeah, this one is another fairly common one, which I saw on a lot of people's lists, which is, we do 5-minute short rests. And I think those are the games that we don't ever play in because we're playing in roleplay heavy games and not combat gamey games.
And that's what I was going to ask you. Are these typically, from your research, the meat grinder dungeons?
So they're not specifically saying that, but my assumption would be yes.
Because play the game.
These are the people that are playing the game in a different way than we play it.
Yeah.
And that's the only reason why. Because in our game, it doesn't make any sense. Why would we ever want a short rest to be 5 minutes? Other than Barovia, because it's scary.
I think I brought this up once. Jake, when he had played games before our game, he was very confused when we did like 3 sessions and we're still in the same world.
Oh, yeah.
And he brought it up and he's like, hey, how much longer does this got? And I'm like, oh, you're level like 3 now. It's going to be at least level 10, 12 when it ends. And he was like, well, how often do we level up? They're like, it depends on your accomplishments. We do milestones. It might be a while. He's like, well, wait, like weeks? I'm like, maybe another like year, maybe a little more. And he's like, what? And it's because all the games he had played up to that point were dungeon grinds.
Yeah.
And it was a continuous story, air quotes, but like events would transpire between sessions. Mm-hmm. And then they would meet again. Like the heroes were called back after 4 years. You're now level 12. And they had to go into this dungeon and fight the troll monster. And you're like, oh, okay. And then 6 years later, the dragon attacked the village, and the heroes of time came. And they would get like gold and loot and everything at the end, and they'd level up, and it was a big thing. They'd come back, and that's how it was, giant time skips. And I'm like, that is the exact opposite.
Yeah, that is not how we play.
That is, I could run a game like that. The game we're actively playing, no.
Nope.
Like, if you're like, you want to craft some like pauldrons, you're going to talk to the blacksmith, you're going to bring in the currency, hopefully he has the material to make what you want, you're going to give him your specifics, and in 3 to 5 business days he might have it done.
That could be 6 months from now.
So like, unless he has something lying around, he gets something off the shelf, it's a little different. And like, it's just a very different thing than what he's used to.
Thing. Yeah.
So I thought that was really funny. And something like that reminds me of that. Like,
yeah, and like I said, I think this is more for those types of games rather than what we're more traditionally playing.
We have one that I'm surprised other people didn't.
I was gonna say, this is the end of the list that I have pulled from
of your most common,
of my most common. So now we have some stuff on your list here.
Yeah, we got one about like I allow people to drag people with them, half movement speed, stuff like that. That's whatever. Big one here, and this is a Matt Mercer special. Tweaking alteration of how he handles Revivify. And it's not that just you have the diamond and you cast the spell and they come back to life. And it's that it's not a guaranteed success. There's a roll. And basically, I don't know if I ever mentioned the DC to you, but I always start the DC at an 8 for your first death. It is your spellcaster modifier for whoever's doing the ritual spell, doing the Revivify. And if other people want to contribute to the roll by either like offerings or bringing up like role-playing scenarios and stories and doing their own roles and stuff, that can positively or negatively affect the DC. And it's just a way for everyone to kind of get together to like come up with a reason to like for that soul to come back, to coax them back into this hellscape that they just escaped from through death.
Their peace and taken away.
Yeah. And like, you want one more round, and it's an 8, and then maybe you get some other people in there. Maybe the DC drops to a 4, and then they roll a total of a 7. Well, guess what? Good thing you had some allies to like help you drop the DC. Well, the next time they pass, that DC is no longer an 8. Now it's a 10. And then it's a 12, a 14, a 16, and 18. And I know some people, I could see a world where like, oh, well, maybe I should increase it by like, Mr. started at a 10. And then it goes up to 15 and then 20 and 90 to 25. I still treat D&D like a game. I'm going to make it more difficult and make that narrative reason why, like, maybe the soul's ready to move on. If their DC's at an 18 and you got a 16, and that sucks to let a character move on, but at that point, they've died.
Yeah.
died to death. Multiple times
to get
and
here.
It's like, you know what? It's their time.
Yeah.
And you let that character have their last words or something, but their soul say something or whatever. But if it's time to move on, it's time to go. And that's how we handle Revivify at this table. So I don't know.
Like it.
I'm surprised more people weren't saying they do something similar.
Yeah. Like I said, there was some other stuff on there, but some of them are just just more like obscure stuff that ain't what you're actually going to play with.
Yeah.
I think the last one that I would give an honorable mention to, which I saw, I think 2 times. So not a bunch, but I did see a couple of times, which is a last breath ruling, a la kind of like a Daggerheart situation, which is when a character does die or they are dying.
This is it for them.
They have a last breath, which is basically a last turn to do something that doesn't involve healing themselves in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
But like maybe a last attack or a last
one
action
final
of some
action.
Sort. Yeah.
Yeah, I could see that for sure.
But yeah, that was one that I saw like I think twice.
No, and it's there's so much to that, because for that player, especially if it makes sense in the story in that moment, and there's no coming back from it, it makes sense to give that character and that player one more moment with their character that's still in their control. instead of the last moment of that character being the DM's control.
Yeah.
While you rolled them to death and you beat them up with your NPCs, and you're just like, sorry, I killed you. You're done. Like, you know what? I put the spotlight back on you, Richard. What does Lux do?
What's the last thing?
Yep. So, and that gives them a moment. If they have some words they want to say or something, they can, whatever makes sense for the moment.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, I totally agree with that one. That one makes sense.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's it for our quick little list of some fun house rules that we use and or don't use.
Yeah.
I'd like to know if you guys have any house rules that we didn't talk about today that are a staple at your table.
If there's any of these you guys do as well, or you've tried out or are going to try, let us know that. But yeah, definitely. Like if you have any that you think we would like or we should try at our own table, let us know in the comments if you're on Spotify or YouTube. We'll get that no matter where you are there. Speaking of Spotify and YouTube, hey, all those audio podcasty places, Apple, Spotify, etc. 5 stars, super cool. Do YouTube, like, subscribe. Awesome. Super appreciated. But yeah, thanks for watching and listening. Your positive affirmation helps keep the lanterns lit. And until next time, I've been Tyler.
And I've been Richard.
And we've been True Strike. Bye.
Bye.
Hey, adventurers. Thanks again for joining us today. Please be sure to give us a follow on your favorite podcasting platforms and YouTube. If there's any questions you'd like to write into the show, you can hit us up on Threads, Blue Sky, or Instagram. New episodes release every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern. Thank you for listening to True Strike.